Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special edition of Talking Seahawks with the Hawks Nest or the BNB Show, whichever you prefer, because it's here, people. Real live football is here. We got a game tonight. We got a game tomorrow night. Seahawks are due up on Sunday. And this is what we've all been working for, right? This is what that whole off season was for. This is what all that time we spent trying to figure things out. This is what it's all built up to. So I am Brendan. That is Brandon. And we are here to tell you a little bit about this week one tilt hosting the San Francisco 49ers. How you doing today, Brandon?
I'm jacked, man. Game week. We finally are here after all this long wait, and what a hell of a matchup we got on deck.
Yeah, this one counts for more than a typical game. This one's pretty important. Home, division rival. You're catching your division rival at a pretty decent time to be catching them, I would say. I think that would be a fair statement to make. So there's a lot riding on you being able to get out there week one and find a way to get a win against a team that looks relatively dangerous this year, but also has they got some problems that you can work to expose.
They really do. It is still a very dangerous team. It is a team that's very capable of coming in our house and beating us here. They've shown that over the past couple of years. But like you said, it's not necessarily even that it's just a decimation of injuries. Those are a little bit of a factor. It's things of guys holding out the last minute, just coming back to camp like Juwan Jennings. But you do catch them as a team that is not necessarily as much the juggernaut as they've been a couple of years prior. I was asking Jesse from Last Second Sports last night, kind of put a percentage point on. You took that first Super Bowl Niner team and where they were from a talent standpoint and then compared them to this current version of this Niner team, and that's 100% scale, let's say, that first Super Bowl Niner team was. He had them at like 65%, this team, of that team from a talent standpoint. So you are getting a team that's not necessarily as strong. And you mentioned as well, a very key point to this is I think the average fan would look at this game and say 17 games, opening game of the season. It's a long year, win or lose, not really going to bear much weight into this over the course of the rest of the year. But I would go nah to that, because last year we ran up into a tiebreaker situation with the Rams that had us the last game of the season. And who did we play at the last game of the season this year? Had you at the last game of the season in a game that didn't matter, because the tiebreakers were blown out for you with that Ram team up until that point. So you don't want to run into that situation again this year. And if you have high hopes for this season, if you have high hopes to go take this division, this is the exact type of win you would expect come the end of the season. You'd look at and say, yeah, we got that one.
Yeah, and I think Seahawks fans have learned, right? This team missed the playoffs by one game last year. They missed the playoffs by one game the year before. They made the playoffs by one game the previous year. So this isn't baseball. This isn't basketball. You can't play that it's just one game nearly to the degree that you do in other sports.
Yeah, this is the beauty of this sport, man. Every game matters, to your point.
Right. So we've got plenty to talk about with the 49ers, but before we get there, we got some pretty big news about 3 hours ago, and we got to talk about this one. There's definitely some stuff that the Seahawks could have done this morning that I wouldn't think merit discussion. Like, they're playing musical chairs on their practice squad the last couple of days to get some people an extra paycheck. That's not really something that I think we really need to expound upon. Like, they're just trying to take care of some guys that have been there for them during this offseason. But this, on the other hand, this one pretty darn big. And if you've been paying attention to the football news of the day, you probably already heard. But Abe Lucas, starting right tackle of the Seattle Seahawks, third-round pick in 2022, was extended. He got his second contract earlier today. 3 years, $46 million. Could be incentives going up to more. So we don't know exactly what the terms of the deal are, but 3 years, 46 is a decent starting point. What are you thinking? How do you feel about this one, Brandon?
I never like to be in a position where we pat ourselves on the back, but you and I literally had these conversations about Abe Lucas, and I think that we nailed this situation exactly for what we thought could occur with the extension front. When it came to a Wolin or when it came to a Cross, there was just not going to be very much as far as significant savings to doing the deal now versus doing it a year from now. And if that's the case, well, why be driven to do this now? I mean, as an organization, you do it because you think you're saving some dough. not to pay and you want to reward the player too, theoretically. But I think with both those two players, you could also come to them and say, we would need another year, whereas with Lucas, you could say the same thing. I know on the surface of this, because he's only had the certain games he started the past 2 years and the knee injury stuff, but he's also here maybe taking a bit of that discount we were talking about, which is that, okay, he goes out and gives you a top 10 tackle season, and then you're giving him into 15 to 20th as far as how you're paying him range wise on the 3-year kind of deal. We even said 3 years is how we'd see it, because the team's not going to go to 4 years with the knee. You'll go 3 years. It's going to be probably incentive laden. There's probably going to be some injury protections into this deal. And so I thought that this was the one of all the guys that could potentially be up for extension, Brendan. This was the guy that made the most sense, because there's actually something for the Hawks to get in signing him now, where it wasn't that case with the other guys.
Yeah, this is the kind of risk that I'm kind of into. This was because extending any of these players, there's some risk involved, and there are different kinds of risks, but this was definitely something I was into as we were leading up to this season. The idea of getting to save a significant amount of money because of circumstance on Lucas. And also the circumstance, I think, very clearly is something that the team feels pretty strongly that he's past. This knee injury that apparently earlier this offseason, it was said by him and other people that it was not chronic and he was past the big issues. So clearly, if you're extending him, you must feel like that is the case. So that's also really good. But to kind of emphasize the potential savings here, earlier this offseason, a few months ago, Zach Tom of the Packers got $22 million per year. And a couple of days ago, Luke Godecki in Tampa Bay got 22.5. If Abe Lucas had played all 17 games this year and played well, he probably would have gotten something around that. Even though it had only been 1 year and he had missed all those games in the last 2 years, you get paid based off the most recent evidence. You get paid based off typically your best play. And with the cap going up, for all we know, Abe Lucas could have been due to get $24 million a year next year if he played really well. So that's significant. That's you're at 60% of where you might have been in a year. That's really good. That's very valuable. And if we are right about this injury thing, and clearly the team has a lot of confidence there, we're going to be looking at that contract as a massive steal in a year, in all likelihood.
I agree. I think that it looks like a smart deal, and it's a little bit like akin to the Mariners with what they did. I know that these guys didn't have injury worries. It was more about you had them youth, and then you had the arbitrary controlled years, but you got ahead of Rodriguez on that deal. That's looking tremendously smart with a big, long deal you gave him. Cal Raleigh, before the start of the year, gave him that big deal. That's looking very smart. I'm in favor of these kind of deals because as an organization, you should be able to look to a player, and if you can remove the injury part of this, look at him and say, where do we extrapolate this guy? Where does he really project to here as he's been a couple years in our program? We're familiar with him. It's not a young player just learning the ropes and we don't know what we exactly got. What do we got? Make an educated understanding of that, especially if it means that you can save some of that money on the front end of this. And one other point to this is club control. You got to the end of this season and you're going to have a variety of guys that are going to be free agents. So you mentioned that high cost, which is right. I agree. It would probably be up at that high cost. But in addition to that, you only have one franchise tag, and you've got about 4 or 5 guys that all potentially could have been in line here to have to try to apply that franchise tag. Also knowing John doesn't like to apply the franchise tag. So not only do you have him now going up and making that amount of money, Brendan, but now he's much likely to now leave and walk out the door, because are you going to be able to retain all those guys? Can you afford to retain every one of the guys? And then maybe a team just comes in and blows you over the top on an offer. But now one less guy that you cannot have to worry about. Less now the pile goes down a little thinner as far as who you've got a franchise on this. I know with Cross, you have his 5th-year option too. So now it really comes down to Woolen or Walker on this, or Mafe. And it makes it a little easier from John's perspective, knowing he's not going to lose a really talented player who suddenly comes into his own because he just kind of has too many numbers.
Right. And it really wasn't sitting well with me that we hadn't extended anybody from the 2022 class, because that was a very good class. You had 6 really quality players from that group. It didn't feel right that we were going to go into season 4 with none of them extended. That struck me as not a very good way of doing business. I would still like to extend Cross, but it seems pretty clear that's not going to happen right now. That's not how this team operates. So we'll see about that, of course. And pretty much everybody else that you could extend, there was going to be some risk. Like Boye Mafe didn't really break out last year. Do you want to extend him knowing that maybe he's just kind of hit his ceiling as a 9-sack-a-year player? The Woolen stuff is kind of tricky because, I mean, I like some of the stuff he's doing, but there's some stuff that I really don't like. Kobe Bryant, I don't know if it makes sense to extend him right after you draft Emin Wari. So whatever you did, it was going to be, there was going to be some risk involved. Nothing was going to be perfect. Nothing was going to be clean. This was the one that I really liked, though, because of the potential for massive savings, where, like I said, 6 months from now, this could be one of the better bargains in the entire league. Because, again, Zach Tom and Luke Godecki are very good players, but I don't look at either of those guys and think, oh, those are all pros. Those are the best players in the league at their position. And they still got way more than Lucas got on their extensions.
Yeah, and I think that it really comes down to your point on those two guys, Cross or Reek, because as you said with Mafe, there's just not a position you feel good about putting him on an extension at this point. You just haven't gotten the consistent play there, and you know that he's going to want to be well paid with it. But I mean, you wouldn't be willing to give Woolen the Sauce Gardner contract right now, would you?
Yeah, I don't think so. I know some people would. I know some people like him a lot more than I do. I know some people are very optimistic on him, and I understand it. But for me personally, I'm just not there yet. I don't see the week-to-week effort with him the way I need to if I'm going to pay that kind of money to a corner when I know I'm a year or two away from having to give an even bigger deal to Witherspoon.
Right. And that's where I say, look, I may be willing to give that Sauce deal after this year or bump it up a little bit with inflation rates, but I'm going to need another year. And so, you know, the Cross one becomes the sort of centered one that you go, we both would probably be in favor of saying, hey, well, how about doing the extension on this one? John was just on an interview where he was speaking to some of these deals that they're trying to get done. So he was giving a little bit of a peek behind the curtain and saying, we're trying to, couldn't quite find that footing. And it was a little bit to me of him intimating the fact that they've got negotiations with some of these guys, but they're wanting to be really well paid. And I just feel like when I look at Reek and I look at Cross, if I'm their agents right now, I'm probably advising them to just play through this year because the price is not going to, the price is only going to go up. And you don't want to give the discount when you know there's such a hefty bag coming for just one more year of service with those two guys.
Yeah, I could see Woolen maybe doing some kind of a deal because he's getting paid peanuts.
Yeah.
Cross, though, he's got that 5th-year money looming, which is significant. So it's a little bit different with him. I still wouldn't mind getting something done there, but for all we know, like you said, he's not coming to the table really. So we don't get to know this stuff sometimes.
Well, if you mentioned they're 24 for the right tackles, Tom, Godecki, you know, Cross's people are probably coming in at like 25, 26, 27. And John's like, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe.
I mean, it's going to be 30 in a couple years, so I don't. That's not nothing, right?
No, and it's I get Cross's people asking for it, so I just, if I'm in John's case, 5th-year option, where it won't just, it's like it's all kind of close. I guess what I'm saying, you know, there's a couple of these guys where it's close on that you could say I'd want to do it, but there's just maybe one little factor as you get up to the finish line on getting deals done there that just kind of holds you back a little bit from getting done. Mainly, the price just isn't. There's not significant enough savings to doing the deal now versus after the year, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I guess the other guy is K9. I'm not really interested in extending him. I don't really want to do the big running back contract thing. To me, that one's almost a non-starter unless it's a way cheaper than I'm expecting. And there's no way he gets less than Chuba Hubbard.
I quite am honestly at this point with Walker that I need to see you healthy through a year. And then if I see you healthy through a year, like you're probably the guy I am franchise tagging. And I think I have every right to do it when you have been beat up so much, and then you only then did prove it for the 1 year. I'd be open to doing that. Running back franchise tag is not as pricey as edge or some of the other positions out there. And so that would be the one that I would look to target on this if I'm Seattle. If he's going to break out, and if he doesn't, you just kind of move on and keep it moving at that point after this year. But it hasn't quite done enough to elicit that contract extension, especially with the injury stuff.
Yeah, even if he has a good year and even if he stays healthy, I don't know if I would do it. I feel like that's an accident waiting to happen. I'd rather just find another running back in the draft and keep the line moving.
I'm okay with that approach. And I'm okay with that approach sometimes on the back of even taking a running back a little bit higher in the draft than, you know, and like a little bit like what we did with the not back-to-back second round picks, but you put the significant asset essentially on the drafted running back on his first contract. To your point, like that's how you think about it. Like we're going to maximize this guy for his rookie contract. And then when he's done, boom, on to the next, because all of the data tells us that these running backs are their most effective on the rookie deal.
Right. Okay, so we're both on board with the Abe Lucas contract. I think it's pretty great. Obviously, it can go wrong, but I'm down with the risk. There are risks that I like. There are risks that I don't. This is one that I'm pretty into.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a significant amount of cap space you're walking in this season, and you still can go make trades. You can still go do other stuff. This isn't going to impede you from that, but it's smart moving. Hell, you can't help but think there's got to bring some pretty nice vibes to the locker room when they're seeing one of their own rewarded right before you're going to start the football season.
Right. So with that being said, I think we can just swing on over to this San Francisco 49ers game on Sunday. We already gave you the brief rundown. It's a home game, division rival, week 1. I don't think I need to sit here and explain to people why this is a big deal, but it is certainly a pretty big deal that we get this Sam Darnold era off on the right foot, and this would be a great way to do it. So let's start with that Niners offense against the Seahawks defense, because this kind of game is why, in large part, McDonald is here. You wanted somebody that could really combat the Shanahan offense, really combat a quarterback like a Brock Purdy. You bring in McDonald. Last year had decent results, went 1-1. He's had better luck against Purdy than pretty much any other coach out there, forced 5 interceptions in 3 games against him so far. So what are you seeing from that matchup this week?
So a couple things that I thought were interesting on this to go back and look, especially some of those advanced NFL stats they now provide you for on NFL.com. And there was 2 things I wanted to really go look at to see how Mike was going to deal with this, because I'd always kind of thought with Mike a little bit in dealing with Brock that he would lean a little bit even more heavily into the stack boxes, close down those passing lanes, make him, with his height limitations there a little bit, feel even more condensed in the pocket. And I would think that the data was going to support that. So when I looked it up, you go back to week 16, 2013, when he's with the Ravens, he runs a stack box rate of 22%, which is right in line with about his average overall for his defenses. Okay. So he didn't increase it on that. And he only blitzed at a 21% rate in that game. So both of those numbers kind of in the same place. We come to Seattle in the week 6 battle last year, the first battle, and he's got a stack box rate of 30%. So a little bit of an uptick there, but he's blitzing down to 20%. So 1% off the blitz rate of where it had been. So similar numbers to what he had done with that first Ravens game, Brendan, in the first Seahawks game last year. Then we get to the third game where he's been, of those 3 games, you could argue maybe the most effective, at least in keeping the Niners down points wise, right? That third matchup. He has a stack box of only 11%, but he blitzes at 40% in that game. So he's essentially there's the light box. I was watching the tape. There's some 3-man fronts that you ran at Brock in that second game. But what you're getting him to do essentially was, rather than at stack boxes, I'm going to get him nervous and like shaking before the snap. Instead, you get him, let's give him a snapshot on what he thinks he's seeing. And then post snap, the snapshot's going to change, and not just with the coverage, but with a lot of the blitzing post snap. Then coverage changes on the back, blitzing coming in addition to it to pair it up. And that, I think, gave Brock some problems in that game and how they set him up in that. And I would have to think is how effective you were in that third game. Not that you weren't effective. You were not great in that first matchup, right. But that was 3 games in 15 nights too. Let's remember that. That was that hellacious stretch of the year last year a little bit as far as how many games you had to play.
Yeah, and we had one of the worst defenses in the league the first half of the year.
Exactly. So I don't know if it's a real great indicator his strat wasn't working, but the fact that he went so different from those first 2 matchups in that third matchup and found success with it, I would think that you playing at home, especially, what's going to help at blitzing at home, the snap counts, those guys getting out of their stances a little bit slower with the crowd noise. I think you would lean into this. And again, bring in some of those blitzes, and Mike is so good, Brendan, at bringing a blitz, and that you tend to have a blitz quarterback wise. You're told, go to your hot, and your hot's going to tend to have some yards to go get after that. Right. That's the way that these quarterbacks are instructed. But what this defense does is it'll bring a blitz and it'll have everything set up for that hot to have defenders rally up on that ball carrier right after the catch. Like, they're essentially preloaded, knowing the quarterback's probably going to go there. So even if they're not tight on coverage on the back, Brendan, they're essentially, as soon as that ball is caught, they're already running downhill to get to him in front of the sticks and make the tackle. And so Mike's so good at this type of stuff in his defense. And that's why I think partly he's had the success with Brock, because Brock's a guy that will he's a good processor, right? He'll think things through and then hit that check down. It's one of his real strengths. And Mike's kind of taken that tool out of his kit a little bit.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. Less stacked boxes in the second game. I would not have guessed that. I watched that game in a bar, so it was kind of hard to really pick up on stuff like that, admittedly. But that is very interesting. But you're still seeing the same pre-snap versus post-snap deception, even without the stacked box. And I kind of like that. I'm kind of into that, especially because you would think that the Niners might be expecting something like heavy stacked boxes going into a game against Mike McDonald, because he's shown that he likes them so much.
He does. And I pair this in addition to hearing guys like Woolen talk about they've never been pressing more than they ever have in their life here this preseason period, and that they're really having these guys in press coverage, and the thought process that you're going to move Witherspoon to the outside. And he does his best stuff in press man situations. And what does that all that blend well into? Blitzing. You play press man on the outside and then you blitz on the front seven, because those just go well in tandem, because you're disrupting the route. Quarterback can't just go to a slant route with the free release. His guy's getting jammed. Oh, he's jammed. I got to go back over my second look. Oh, they took my hot around. Oh, I'm sacked. You know, it can go boom, 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 just like that. So I think that this is where this is all kind of leading to in this particular game a little bit. And I love that. I love you trusting your corners, because again, Brendan, who are you scared of on the outside on this Niner receiving core? Who's going to take the top off this defense? Who's going to go out there and just as a bullet with the ball in their hands?
Yeah, you don't want to talk about bullets with Ricky Pearsall in the mix here.
or Brian Robinson for that matter.
Yeah, actually, you're right. Wow, I didn't even think about that. Both of them.
Well, both.
But it's not it's not the same. That's for sure. I feel like people have forgotten how good Brandon Ayuk was because he was hurt last year. I feel like people have forgotten how good that guy can be. I feel like over the last year plus, there's been a real push by a lot of people to look at Ayuk as some kind of a jag, but that's a pretty big downgrade. Now they've got, I literally checked the depth chart on ESPN yesterday, and I know that this could be erroneous, but Marquez Valdez-Scantling is literally their third receiver listed, and he was a guy who was on the street a week ago.
Yeah.
So there's some real problems there. Jawan Jennings is nice, but is he going to be 100%? I guess they gave him a little bit of money, so we know he's not faking it anymore, right? They took care of that.
Yeah, it makes more sense why he ended his holdout, because it felt like a holdout to nowhere. Like, what was the whole point of that at that point if you're not going to hard line this down all the way down the line? But a guy's been out all of training camp. I don't know the last player I can remember was like out all of training camp, and then he's just going to jump into the games after a couple of days of practice and, didn't miss a beat. He's just that amazing. Doesn't matter. Doesn't need practice. Who needs that? Pshaw, I got it. I can't buy into it. I think it's got to affect him a little bit. At the very least, he's not going to be able to run the full totality of snap counts. And if you've got a Marquez Valdez-Scantling out there, hell, if you got a Brian Robinson out there, you got a Sky Moore out there, you've got guys that don't know the playbook. This is a detail-driven system. This is a system with a lot of moving parts, pre-snap motion, all that stuff. You don't have guys that know their playbook inside and out. You're going to have, mental errors and mistakes that are unforced at times from that. Wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit of that in this game.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about that Niners running game now, because that's a little bit interesting. One of the big things I think the Seahawks failed at this offseason, one of the things that I think they really kind of dropped the ball on, was the nose tackle spot. And they're going into the first game of the season. Sure enough, they don't really have a true nose tackle. Jaron Reed is the closest thing they have, and that would be okay if they're willing to let him play nose tackle. That remains to be seen. And Jonathan Hankins is out, and I don't know when we're going to see him again, to be perfectly honest with you. So I'm a little bit concerned about that, and I'm looking at this Niners team. Is it possible that the lack of a good nose tackle might not hurt that much in a game like this against the Niners' more outside zone-based run scheme? Do you think maybe that might work out?
Yeah, because they're not as much set up as well. They've got like the 31st most light offensive line in the sport. So you don't have like the Rams where it's a big 1,000-pound wall in the interior three guys, to mean where if you get a double block on a light nose tackle like Byron Murphy, really hard for him to hold up on that. Versus a couple of lighter guys, maybe a little bit of a better chance for him to do okay there. I think Jaron's going to get some snaps there, but there's no way to get around the fact that Byron Murphy is also going to have to eat up some snaps on this side of it. Just that's the way this is going to roll this week. until maybe Hankins is healthy or they feel good about bringing up a Peely or something. They just didn't have any other answers for it. It is what it is, man. I mean, it is what it is on that side of it. But the running game is going to be the important part. You did a good job of shutting it down in that second matchup. How healthy was McCaffrey at that time? How healthy is he now? I think that's a big question mark on both of those two fronts of things. And we'll see if he's prime McCaffrey or if I've lost his depth McCaffrey. We'll see on that part of it. But you did play the run really well that second matchup. And again, going back to just the stack boxes percentage was 11%. It wasn't like you're bringing down the fifth man at the line of scrimmage to try to stretch the line out. It wasn't like you were bringing down extra defenders into the gaps. It was that those guys just played great gap integrity throughout that game. Devin Witherspoon did a great job of being a factor as a slot and a tackler and playing the position like a linebacker rather than like a nickel back in how he played the run. So that helped out in the factor of guys on it. And then Ernest Jones. I mean, Ernest Jones was absolutely night and day difference when he was in there last year and his ability to get off the second level climbers, because that's what this offensive system is. That's why they're so light. They want the light guys that can move in space. They want to get down to your linebackers. They want to get down there. And so if you got a linebacker like Jones, who's so hard to block, and Tyrese Knight's a lot like this too, I think this gives you a nice inroads to being able to clog up that ground game of the 49ers.
Yeah. Sounds good to me. So obviously there are going to be games down the line where not having the nose tackle matters more than this one, I think. So speaking about that Niners offensive line though, looking at that unit, I know that Shanahan really does a good job mitigating whatever lack of talent they might have up front. But is it just me, or is this a pretty weak group for 2025?
I think you'd agree. It just kind of seems like as I go along doing this, that there just seems like every team, every coaching staff, they have their positional blind spot. And it differs team by team, but there's just some positional group that they just kind of relegate to the redheaded stepchild. And with the Niners, would you not maybe agree that looking at what they've done and how they've dealt with this? I mean, when the Pearsall pick came up, you're like, they're going to get a lineman here. And Pearsall? You got Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and Juwan Jennings. And I think that with the offensive line, this is just a place this is where, they got to look over their shoulder in the car to be able to see the car there. And they're not looking over their shoulder. And right. I think this is a place that gets them bought. Do you agree on that?
Yeah. And they can join the club. There are quite a few teams like that, but they are definitely one of the teams that has struggled here. It almost seems like they just depend on Trent Williams being Atlas with the globe on his shoulders every year. And he is great. And we are going to be getting him at his best, right? Because it's week 1. And that is worth noting for a lot of players on this Niners team. McCaffrey, Kittle, Williams, by week 18, those guys are probably going to have very little left in the tank. But week 1, they're going to be able to put their best foot forward.
Yeah, and I think they've got like Ben Barch in there starting at left guard. He played like one good game last year, was injured throughout the rest of it. I think, Brendan, it's the thing I'm happy about with the Niners here as they get to kind of the end of this window is that I think if they take an approach 2 years ago to really reinvest back in this offensive line in a major way, they could have elongated this window a little bit more. It would have taken a different look and a different personality of a team as far as how it went forward. But instead of that, they kind of doubled down in some other areas that were outside of that. And I think that that's made them weaker. And it stands out because you look at the one guy that they have drafted high in recent years being Dominic Puni in the 3rd round, smashing success. So good for us that this is their blind spot, but this is not a line that's necessarily one of your stronger in the NFL. It can get by. And it's also a testament, Brendan, to when people talk about our offensive line and well, why will it just naturally get better? Well, why will it just the scheme help it out? This is what the scheme does on that. This is the benefits of this. This is why a guy like Shanahan leans into not putting so much talent on the line because he's like, my scheme can get it done. My scheme can overcome that. I was listening to a Mark Schlereth podcast. I don't know if you heard him. He had a great story on this that was just something that you talk about this particular thing being a part of our new system and this particular thing not being a part of the Grubb system and how he run it. And Mark was talking about blocking a defensive lineman back in the day. And he came off the ball and he blocked it like he was run blocking. Not that he went down past the line of scrimmage. You can only go a couple yards down the line of scrimmage and then you get a penalty. But that instead of I'm in my pass set, right? I'm in my pass set. Instead, I'm coming at you off the line like this. And the lineman goes, you can't effing do that. You can't be doing that. That's cheating. And Mark's like, suck it. I can do it all day long if I want. And think about that with Grubb. Everything's passed. So when you have a system here that has built-in features to hit these guys in a way to make the defenses have to think now post-snap. Like think what that does to a defender. If I want to get upfield, I want to attack. Now I got to be on even if I think it's a run pass play, is it really? He's blocking me like it's a run. Am I quite sure okay, it is. And that little half second you get, that little hesitation that you can get in defenders can make such a big difference. And I think that Shanahan leans into that. This is why he's gone but this is also why I'm so emboldened by our offensive line just getting naturally better on the back of being able to utilize these kind of techniques.
Right. We are betting a lot on the scheme here. I know that we did improve some of the players. I know we swapped out Tomlinson, but there is a heavy bet being made on the scheme doing the heavy lifting, because we talked about this during the offseason. There was not really any money spent free agency wise on bolstering the line. So if that doesn't work, it's going to be the same line that it was the last couple of years, probably.
Yeah. Well, and it's a late in the hour click for me, Brendan, where it's like, I've been, kind of in this place where we should have gone harder. I think just the more that I've got to see in preseason, the more I've got to kind of try to think about this and understand it. Cause again, we haven't had a Shanahan system in here. We haven't been operating here. But Holmgren back in the day wasn't running a Shanahan. He was running a West Coast offense with man-on-man principles, not even really zone-based principles, man-on-man. So when I say 20, 25 years, we've not had this system here. We haven't. And I'm not as well acquainted with some of these built-in benefits it has, even though we've played it so often and we've had those benefits we've been facing here the past few years and the bad end of it. But there are these built-in added additions to this offense and just naturally the way it's structured, because so much of the passing game and the running game are married together. Whereas a guy like Grubb last year, you saw that the passing game and running game weren't married at all together.
Right. I like it. And look, watching the Niners, we know it can work, right? That Niners offensive line for years has been pretty low on talent, but they got it done. They you wouldn't notice most games because of the scheme. I remember, and this goes back a long way. Like I remember some Patriots teams with Brady and Belichick. They had no talent on the offensive line. They just ran the spread, and you barely ever really noticed the bad offensive line. So, like, this is something that can work. This is something that you can do, and it's not invalid to say that that was the investment that needed to be made, not better players.
100%. And this is a system that you can look through a lot of different eras of people running this system that have been able to get by with not always the greatest of talent. Even those Bronco teams that won back-to-back Super Bowls in the mid-90s. We know Schlereth, partly because he's so vocal and he's a guy, the media personality. That team had Terrell Davis running for 2,000 yards. And like I said, back-to-back Super Bowls. But can you name an offensive lineman off that Bronco team?
I mean, I was very passively watching football back then. I'm going to.
You're probably you're probably young, but it's I think they had good linemen, but I just think that this is a thing this is why Shanahan's been kind of carrying this on from where his father had ran with this, going, you can find your way here with this. It doesn't have to be dogs across the board. I go the other way with this, by the way, though. Whereas the leaning is to go, well, my system can get it done, so I don't need that stuff. I'm the guy that says, hey, what if you give this system grade A offensive line talent across the board then? I think about the potential upside of how far you can drive that rather than sort of going off the bare minimum approach to lighting it, going to that light range of it.
Yeah, and the Seahawks are moving in that direction. They've got 2 first-round picks on the line. They've got a 3rd-round pick now that they've extended. Like, there has been an investment there. I don't want to act like we're building this whole line out of spare parts. We're not.
To your point on that, one of the things we've knocked them on has been about how much they've actually spent on the line, right? So you get into next year's cap as it stands right now, just next year's cap. You've got the 5th-year option of Cross at blah, 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 a good amount of money there. You got Lucas now on his extension, and then you have Zabel on a first-round contract as a top 20 pick. So now there's going to be a lot more significant money already before we add anything else onto it next year, put into this in addition to the draft picks you just talked about.
Yeah, and I think the big thing to note about this offensive line is every starter is 26 years old or younger. Like most Seahawks offensive lines over the last several years have had at least one veteran bottom of the bargain bin guy, like Mike Upati, Gabe Jackson. Last year it was Lakin. I'm probably forgetting a couple guys as well, but they've had that guy over and over again. They finally don't.
It's part of the AARP sponsorship we've got with them. That's why we brought those guys in, man. We told AARP that we're going to always have a retiree in on the line, and it's a nice it's a nice little deal between the team and AARP, and they get their name out there, and
yeah, and Connor Williams couldn't even make it to the end of the season.
It's true.
He straight up retired mid-season. That's how bad it got.
Yeah, it was It was dark there last year, that offensive line. Boy, was it ever. But it's been dark for a few years here at times too.
Right. A couple moments of competency in like 2020, 2022, and then it disappears, which is what happens when you build it out of older guys that have nothing but downside.
Yeah. Go with older guys. Can't be surprised when they can't make it through the whole season.
So back to their offense versus our defense real quick. One thing that I'm really excited about with a game like this is Emin Wari, because he is probably going to play a lot of nickel this season. And that puts him closer to the line of scrimmage, which I think is a move designed to put him in a position where he can use his strengths. And Emin Wari, to me, is at his best when he's allowed to be close to the line, which is why the safety stuff might come. But I really like the idea of putting him at nickel. And against this Niners outside zone, we know, I mean, a couple of years ago, they came into Seattle and literally sent Reek Woolen to the bench because they just kept running at him. If you're trying to run the ball at guys like Witherspoon and Emin Wari, it's going to be completely different. And I'm really excited to see what kind of an impact he can bring versus what we've had in previous years.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think that this is the kind of guy, especially who helps. This is the kind of matchup that you're most especially helped by having an Emma Wari in here on a couple different levels. That it allows Witherspoon to go outside and play outside cornerback. Now gives you, of your three corners, outside slot. Now you have two corners that are plus tacklers for the position, that are good run defenders for the position. They can get off blocks really well. You're out there and typically blocking a 5'9", 5'10", 185-pound slot, and now you have a 6'3", 230-pound Mawari you're trying to block up. It's quite a different task that you're having to try to pull off one versus the other. So he is going to help out tremendously in this way of things. I expect Seattle's going to roll this in this game with him in that place, and then Witherspoon mainly on the outside. I think there'll be certain matchups where you have Witherspoon in the slot. If you have a quicker, more jittery guy inside, maybe you're going to go with Witherspoon on week in, week out basis on this a little bit. But this week, Mawari is going to be in there. He's going to beat a lot of snaps. He's going to be bringing impact just of how good a camp he has. I think you're going to see what he can do here in this game in that respect of things. But really stoked for that. And then it's also the Kittle matchup. Brennan, I think that there's the bit of what Niners want to do coming into this game, which is let's isolate these linebackers with or the slot, essentially, if you've got that with Kittle and McCaffrey, and play those two guys off of each other a little bit, and how you try to target and isolate guys in mismatches. But Mawari then gives you a guy that if you match him up on Kittle one-on-one, he can run with Kittle. He's then going to have Kittle's used to being a guy who can kind of go up and moss guys and can kind of be hey, I'm bigger than you as a guy that's trying to cover me as a smaller linebacker or a smaller slot. Now he's got a guy that can run step for step with him, and should be a problem in for Kittle as far as, you better create the separation through the route, because if it's at a contested catch point, this guy's going to be all over you with that. I think that helps. Another place that helps Seattle out tremendously.
Yeah, and like I said, this should be Kittle at his best this year because he's not worn down at all. So if you can get him this week, you got his number, I guess. You're going to get him every week.
Yeah. And with Juwan Jennings coming off that injury, that they're going to lean on these two guys, especially being Kittle and McCaffrey, because that's all. After Juwan, they're in a lot there. I mean, Ricky Pearsall, but Pearsall is kind of a slot receiver. Like if they're in base situations, I don't know if he's going to be out there, because if that's good for us. If you have Pearsall out on the outside, good night, brother. Remember the tape? Remember the tape with him when he'd be on outside in college? And he wasn't in college. They put him in motion all the time. It was that stupid orbit motion.
Was he the Florida guy? I'm trying to remember.
The tiny little Florida guy. He looked super small in college tape too. He's fine size, but he just gets pressed to death, dude. And that they may do that by necessity because he knows the playbook. So you have to play him outside. If you go base down situations with too wide, he may have to come out there because he's the only guy that knows the stuff. But if he's out there, dude, he does not work on the outside to me. He's a guy you have to have in pre-snap motion or lined up in the slot to get him effective.
Yeah, like I was looking at the Niners depth chart last night, and Jacob Cowing is out for this game. I had kind of forgotten about that because Jacob Cowing's not some great player. But when you think about it, in a game like this, he probably would play a lot over a guy like MVS because Cowing should know the playbook. So that's actually kind of a big deal.
And Cowing's got speed. And that's what this Niner wide receiver core is desperately missing right now, is the guy that can take the top off the defense or be the threat to take the top off the defense. That's why you're bringing in Marquez Valdes-Scantling to hope he can come in here and to be that guy for them. And that's why you also don't worry about, to me, of blitzing a lot, going press man on the outside, because they don't have that threat. They don't have Deshaun Jackson out there in his prime sitting out there that you've got to keep the safety over the top at all times.
Oh, yeah, and Demarcus Robinson, the suspension, that was the other one that was kind of interesting because he'd play a lot this week for sure if he was out there.
He's out. Justin Gage is another guy they brought in as a vet who's out for an injury too. In addition to that, so it's been beat up a bit, that receiving core. It's definitely not coming in anywhere near what we've seen in recent years. And this is where the vulnerability lies and allows your defense to be the inroads to really get the better of this Niner team in this matchup because of that.
Right. All right. So I think that's a pretty good rundown of that Niners offense. I think we should be good, man. I think we should be good. I think this is why you hire McDonald. This is why you let McDonald build out this defense the last year plus, to stop a team like the Niners from doing what they want to do on you. And I like the matchup, and I'm feeling pretty good about it.
I am as well. I think that it's a good Niner offense and that there's going to be some points scored, but I think this defense playing at home in this first game, they're going to be hyped up through the moon. With the talent we're bringing back, laid to bear, Emawari, we didn't even talk about DeMarcus Lawrence and his impact here, who we didn't have last year, and his ability to just set a complete, like, my edge is my edge. You're not running to my edge. You better go over there. You better just run over that side, because this ain't going to work. And Boye Mafe sitting over there on the other side. So good luck there too.
Yeah. I like it. Probably no Nwosu this week. That would be the one guy that we're probably going to be down. I expect pretty much everybody else to play, except for a guy like Riley Mills, but we knew that.
Yeah. I again come back with Riley of just give him the year. Give him the year. Let him sit through. We don't need, unless, I mean, they can wait on this a little bit to make sure we don't have our 3 tech get hurt. Like Leonard goes down week 6, and let's see if Riley, can slide in and give us some 3 tech stuff. That being the only reason I'd maybe wait on this a little bit, but let him get back full health.
I agree. There's no room for him right now anyway. We do have a few donos. Addison Shelby, thank you for the $2. Never let Jake forget Poona Ford is a pass rusher.
So yeah, in a debate with one of my guys over on the NFC West roundtable, Brendan, where I was trying to get across, and I don't think I got it across to Jake, because I go, Jake, you guys don't really have a nose tackles right now, like quality wise. I know we're in a place that we're saying this thing, but they're even in worse case to me. They lost Bobby Brown this offseason, who he had a lot of those snaps. Kobe Turner can do some, but he's more of a 3 tech. Braden Fisk is a purified 3 tech. You put Braden Fisk in the 1 tech, you might as well just have him turn around and start walking towards the opposition's end zone, because you're going to see the same thing occur. So they bring in Poona Ford, and he's trying to sell me on the fact that Poona Ford now is going to be a nose tackle for them. And I'm like, Tierre Tart was the nose tackle for the Chargers last year. Poona was playing more of the 3 tech. Poona's made the transition like Jaron did to the 3 tech role away from nose tackle very early on in his career. So is there a disconnect here I'm missing on this one, Brendan, that I'm not understanding? Because to me, they're bringing him in to eat up more 3 tech snaps than they're asking him to meet 1 tech snaps at the end of the day there, or nose tackle snaps at the end of the day.
I guess sometimes players sometimes transition to the nose tackle stuff when they get older, but Poona's not that old yet, is he? He's not like 35 or anything. He's middle-aged.
Yeah, he's like 30 or something. He's got 6-7 years in the league, or somewhere in that neighborhood of things, with it. So I just think I'd be very surprised if that's what they're looking to really do with him in this, and that's what's pushing this move. I mean, it may, but if he isn't it, I don't know if they've got a lot behind it.
Yeah. I mean, there is kind of a nose tackle shortage right now. Everybody wants to just go get the quarterback these days. Nobody wants to take on the triple teams anymore.
They don't, which I think this is where teams aren't using enough foresight on this one, Brendan, because the game's going back to running the ball. The game's going back to running the ball in the A and the B gap, especially right now because of the light boxes. So having the nose tackle is more important than ever.
Right. And by the time college football catches up on this, they'll probably swing back the other way. So that's just how it goes.
We'll be back to single high, and yeah.
Speaking of nose tackles, Holy Hand Grenade, thank you for the $2. Think we pick up a nose tackle during the trade deadline. Interesting.
It'd have to be a team. I don't know. I've looked through pretty hardly HHG on nose tackles throughout the league that could be available, and there's not quite the fit. Take a guy like a Corey Redding, older player, Colts. This would be the type of guy you target to say, okay, the Colts aren't going to have a good year, and he'd be a guy who's been a very good run defender throughout his career, can come in and give you instant returns on what you're getting. But the guy just signed a contract extension with them, and they'd probably have to eat too much dead money to move a guy like that around the trade deadline. I had a lot of those kind of situations pop up for me when I tried to research and finding nose tackle. There's not very many ones, like Brendan just said, across the league quality-wise, but the ones that are there, that are quality across the league, tend to not get moved very often, tend to stay where they're at.
What I would look at is something like the year Tampa Bay won the Super Bowl in 2020. Vita Vea got injured very early in that season and went on IR, and he missed most of that year. And this happened right before the deadline. And Tampa Bay gave up a 7th-round pick to the Jets for Steve McClendon, who was a very low-level nose tackle, but he was competent, he was capable. And they combined McClendon with Nunez Roches, I think was his name, and were able to get adequate nose tackle play out of those two guys for the season, and they were able to win the Super Bowl. It would probably be something like that, a player that we don't even really know about right now that you get for like a throwaway pick, and it's okay. Something like that. Not you're not going to trade for I don't know who's you're not going to trade for Vita Vea. You're not going to trade for one of these elite nose tackles.
Yeah, agreed. You're going to have to kind of piecemeal it, to your point, if you find a fix or find some stopgap out there. Just kind of is what it is on that front.
Yeah, it's another position where there is a bit of a shortage too. So if you are trying to get somebody good, you have to pay a premium, and I don't know if I want to do that.
I don't either. I do come back in my mind a little bit with Jordan Phillips playing pretty good early on. He's playing pretty good early on, and that was a guy in the 3rd round that you had sitting there staring you in the face potentially. And
yeah,
you know,
that's where you should do it. Just draft a guy. Don't trade for him mid-season. Don't sign some 38-year-old guy like Linval Joseph in free agency. Just draft somebody. The youth is going to matter as much as anything else.
Make it a point of something that matters, not something that you'll get around to.
Feed me more. Thank you for the $2. O-line, Niners, small guys who move, us big guys who move. That is the idea. The Niners, because I mean, I guess Jalen Sundell's kind of small. He's like 300 flat or something.
Yeah. He's a little undersized, or quasi undersized. You've got good movers in space on this. I mean, you've got in Lucas and Cross, 2 guys that played in air raid offenses in college and spread offenses and had to move around and do a lot of that stuff. They certainly are plus movers for the position. I would say both of them are. And Zabel the same way as a tackle convert to guard. He absolutely can. Even Bradford, I mean, is an athletic freak. They're also, we got bigger guys too, though. We don't necessarily sacrifice the size, to Feed me's point, like the Niners have, to get the mobility.
Yeah, Bradford's an all-time great RAS athlete. He's like 9.97 or something.
That's right. Yeah. We get the best of both worlds here, Brendan. The big and the good movers.
Right. And Lucas, I mean, for a guy who can move, for a guy who played an air raid, when that guy decides to get physical, he can just drive people back 25 yards sometimes.
McDonald's called him a finisher, and these are the kind of guys you need on an offensive line when you want to be a run team, because it's not just the one snap you get the dominant, Brendan. It's that here's the 45th snap of this guy running me down the field again, and I'm tired of that. I'm tired of fighting this. This is too what? Can they just pass the ball, please? Oh my God, another run play. Can you just throw once? It wears the defenses down, man. You break their will into the late 3rd and 4th quarter at that point, not to mention a lot of times start to tire them out.
Oh, yeah. Dylan Sosa, thank you for the $4.99. Is it just me, or are tight ends and screen passes Mike McDonald's weaknesses? Seems like that even when he was in Baltimore. What are y'all's thoughts?
Yeah, I could see that being a little bit of it. I know that the Chiefs game a couple years ago in the conference championship against the Ravens, they used a lot of the bubble screen game action. Short passing, I think in general, can sometimes have a lot of benefit to McDonald's scheme. Some of that comes from McDonald having a little bit of his corners on the outside, for instance, play a lot of the off coverage, and then they play zone coverage. If you're off coverage in your zone on the outside at corner, it's kind of like being an outfielder in baseball, where your natural steps post snap tend to take you going backwards 1 or 2 or 3 steps. And so what that then leads is for stuff in front of you to be opened up, be it in cutting routes or be it like screenplays. So it is a little bit from that. I would say it's interesting is that it comes more to me from the zone and guys off coverage more than it is that you're blitzing. Because when you tend to beat people with the screenplay, it's that they've blitzed and you've caught them with their pants down and you've got blockers out in front and boom, you got them. But with this, it's more of he's still dropping the 7 into coverage. It's just that they've got their predominant spots they're heading to, predetermined spots they're heading to. And that then leaves that opened up a little bit. But every defense is going to have some vulnerabilities to it. There is no perfect defense.
Yeah, you got to give up something. There's no way you're going to just stymie unless you're playing a bad team. Maybe if you're playing a bad team, you can, but for the most part, you got to give up something. And I think it'd be fair to say that the tight end and screen pass stuff could be his weakness. There have been moments where his run defenses have not been very good. I remember the second half of the year in Baltimore in 2023, the run defense kind of broke down. It had moments of breaking down in Seattle last year. So that would be another area that he hasn't quite gotten it perfect.
Yep. And that's going to be I think the running game stuff is just, that's the cost of doing business with light boxes.
Right.
You're going to go with the 6 down there at times. 6, it's going to get tangy a little bit with that. And I think even the short passing game, how many throws did we see in this preseason period over the top on our Hawks? One throw on Nehemiah Pritchett with Matthew Golden in the Packer game. Aside from that, you kept everything clean. Every offense that faced you, as far as the Raiders and the Chiefs, were just dinking and dunking you. And why? Because Mike McDonald's system has a heavy prevalence on protecting against the deep ball. It is built in there. It's not to the Carroll place of it where it's extreme, but it is pretty standardized within this defense that in general terms, to start this off, we are going to make sure we're protecting against getting taken over the top, especially with leaving our corners one-on-one on the outside.
Yeah, and that's a league-wide thing right now too. Pretty much everybody's doing that.
100%. That's the cover 2 shell in a nutshell.
Mark Sanchez, thank you for the $2. E-Man is getting a touchdown, scoop and score, or a pick 6. I can dig that.
Let's go, Mark. I'm sorry, man. I missed his dono the other day as I was finishing up my show. So sorry about that, Mark, on that. I didn't mean to do that. But Emma Wari, man, is going to make an impact. You should have seen Jesse's face drop the other night when I told him about Corbin telling us when I was up there in Seattle about he feels like this guy's going to wear a gold jacket someday. I think Jesse's eyeballs just about rolled out of his head. He's like, we already got to deal with this defense. And then you get one of those. You get one of those too, you know. Emma Wari is that X factor that could really be the thing that takes this thing over the top if he can be good and be good immediately. You get this added into the mix with the Lawrence, with the 11 returning starters, with the 15 guys that have started last year on defense. My goodness, look out.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, that would get this crowd into it pretty quickly. I think this crowd is looking for a reason to get into it, and Emmett Ward touchdown would do it.
What you'd love to do against this Niner team too, because they are not set up to play from behind. They're set up to play from ahead. So you get up on top of them, you start to take away a little bit of that running game from them and that ability to lean on that throughout the game, put it on Brock Purdy's arm to win the day with only Juwan Jennings out there as his wide receiver. Yeah, that'd be a nice recipe for success for your Seahawks.
Roy Froelich, thank you for the $10 Canadian. This is by far the best Hawk stream out there. You two will really work well together. I appreciate that, Roy.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you, Roy, so much, man. That's really kind. We love what we do on this, and it's awesome being able to do this. 5 years we've been rolling, I think, on this or something like that. So it's as I say, BNB forever, baby.
Yeah, we'll be doing it. Should be doing it about as long as they have the Seahawks until
that's right.
Until the heat death of the NFL, I guess.
That's right. Until the new sport comes up that takes over everything.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So do you want to tell the people about some picks this weekend? You want to go and go with that?
Let's go with some of our picks. This is a show here sponsored for you guys by Sleeper.
Let me try to get the graphic on screen the right way.
We're trying to get these. We got a lot of graphics here from Sleeper, so we're trying to get this right. But both me and Brendan are very, very proud to be sponsored by the Sleeper app this upcoming year. Sleeper is an app you can utilize for fantasy or to do daily picks on the over/under. It's got a lot of different stuff you can get in there and have fun with. They've got the freebie picks in there. We're going to show you a couple of our picks here right now that we've made for this week. But they are matching right now up to 100% of your first deposit, up to $100. So you use either Brendan or my code, and my code is NEST. What did you choose for your code there, Brendan?
Okay, so yeah, this is yours, NEST. Sorry about the graphics. Next time they'll be a little bit better, but you've got NEST Nest, and I have SBN. So Seahawks Brendan Nelson.
There we go.
SBN.
Okay. There we go.
Right.
So use your code on that, but do please show your support over there. There is some limitations in the state of Washington, but I am being told that this is supposed to open up in October. As far as from the folks on this, that you can start to be able to use the app more in full at that point in Washington, or if you're in a casino in the state of Washington, you can use it on their particular network.
All right, let me see if I can get this to work real quick. Okay, there we go. So this is what you've got for the week?
These are my picks for the week. You do it, like I say, they do give you what's called the free pick. You can see that with Dak Prescott. So 0.5 yards over. You better believe I took that one. You would take that too. It's kind of your initial, hey, we'll give you a free one here as far as the collection. I then took Bijan Robinson with an anytime touchdown over, Josh Jacobs, and then Kyron Williams. I like the anytime touchdown. I look for those matchups where I think it's very likely you're going to see a good amount of scoring. And that there's not going to be a defensive battle necessarily on that. I think with Jacobs and Detroit, the Green Bay, you can see that, being a bit of a shootout in that one and the way that that could play. I know Tampa Bay's got a good defense, but I just think Atlanta's going to try to really run the ball, and it's an anytime touchdown, so it can be either running or receiving on that one, which is why I like those picks. But you will 5.87 times that selection on that. So $1, you'd make $5.87 if you had this bet laid down, or these picks laid down. Yeah, what'd you have, Brendan?
All right, so I have, let's get this on screen here. We've got, first of all, I did take the free pick on Dak Prescott, same as you, just has to get one passing yard. So that would be pretty tough to not hit. That would be difficult.
That would hurt.
Yeah. And then I got Jalen Hurts going over 175 passing yards because I think tonight is going to be a little bit of a shootout. I like that Dallas offense. Dallas just traded their best pass rusher and added a run stopper in Kenny Clark. So I think it's going to be a little bit tougher to run against him. And I think that Hurts is going to have to air it out a little bit because Dallas's offense is good enough to keep up. So I'm going to say the over on 175 on Hurts. And then I've got two more going tomorrow, the Friday night game. I got Mahomes under 245 yards passing. I think that Chargers defense is going to make a big statement in prime time. They were maybe the best defense in the league last year. I think they're going to build on that. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. And I have Omarion Hampton not getting into the end zone in his first ever NFL game.
I like the unders. I always struggled to pick the unders, Brennan. I'm always an over guy. I'm always just hunting for those. So
yeah, I think the overs are there to like pull you in a little bit on the Vegas side of it. They do good, man. They know what they're doing.
They do. They know how to get you on that. But I love those picks, man. I do.
So 5.34x. So that would be on a $1 bet, $5.34 back. You can go up to $10 here. And yeah, get over to Sleeper. Check them out. You are missing out if you're not involved with them this year. It's daily fantasy, but you've also got scores. You've got stats. You've got the ability to chat in real time about plays as they happen. A lot of great stuff going on over there. So hop on the Sleeper app.
Please do. Please do.
And promo code, whoever you like better between me and Brandon.
That's right.
Either Nest or SBN.
We're having a promo off.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. All right. Okay. So we got a few more donos in here. Sam Carlson, thank you for the $1.99. With Abe's extension, who else do you think is up? Yeah, this has been an interesting discussion over the last couple of months. I think you could go a few different ways with this one.
My feeling on it, Samuel, to take kind of a hardline stance on this is that outside of Wolin and Lucas being willing to actually give some discount to the team for being willing to reward them early on, and I'm not just talking about $1 or $2 million, that I just don't think that the extension gets done with those guys. If Walker goes out and he's got 1,000 yards through the first 11 weeks of the season or 12 weeks of the season, does that push Seattle to say, hey, Ken, why don't we just give you some maybe something like that could go down on that. I could see John's paid running backs in the past, even though I'm not advocating for it. We're also got to talk about what John has a tendency to do. So, he has paid running backs before. So something like that could come down the line here, Samuel, but I don't really see Kobe Bryant. You're probably letting him walk to let Nick Emawari take over the safety role. I don't think that you're looking to put him on an extension, especially already paying Julian Love, especially Julian Love's contract's really going to start to kick in and cost a lot of money here soon. So I just don't think that there's really a guy that is up for an extension here. You're probably just going to stand pat with where it is.
Yeah, I still would say I'd like to get Cross done because I know the left tackle market is just going to go psycho mode over the next couple years. But we also know that John does not like extending players who have multiple years left on their deal. I don't agree with that philosophy. I think sometimes you should do it, but that's not how he operates. And again, Cross might not even really be willing to come to the table. So I don't know if anybody's really next up at this point. I would almost wonder if maybe we need to look outside of the 2022 draft class and see if there's somebody else. Like Maybe like a Leonard Williams. What if he has a really good year and you want to lock him down because next year's the last year of his deal? Something like that.
It's going to be tough with Leonard, though, because you've put some void years on the back end of that thing. And so it becomes like you put him on a new contract, and it's new contract plus the void year money still sitting on the books a little bit, which will make it's possible, but I think it'd make it probably hard for an extension right now, especially the 2 years. It's still technically then more than 1 year he's got on his deal, left.
Right. Yeah, there's really not too much drama going on with these extensions because remember, we cannot extend Witherspoon or JSN or any players like that until next year, next offseason. So can't do that. That's not on the table.
Yeah, I think you'd be in much more of a pickle here as far as thinking you have to do this too. If these guys are taking a discount, Moffitt had come off a 12-13 sack season. Woolen had come off a 7-8 interception year and played pretty good run defense, or at least average run defense around that. This would change a little bit of the scope of this in this discussion. But there's guys that have a little bit more hay they got to put in the barn, and they're not also not willing to quite give you that discount that just doesn't make it add up.
Yeah, it's just not quite coming together perfectly. Yeah. Like Woolen would have been a slam dunk a couple years ago, but he just hasn't quite developed the way I was hoping. So I'm not there with him.
No, there's a strong argument to be made that Woolen had the best year of his 3 years here in Seattle in his first year. Not that he's been bad the next 2 years, but just he had his best year that first year. And that doesn't tend to lead teams year into year 4 thinking we should give that guy then the extension. It's no brainer. You got to get him ahead of time. Instead, no, that actually leads you to think, let's let this have a little bit more time to assess.
Peter Go Hawks, thank you for the $1.99. Lockdown Lucas before the season is a blessing. Yeah, this is the kind of move that I like it when this team makes, and it's also a move that I didn't think they were going to make, so I was pretty pleasantly surprised this morning. I thought that there weren't going to be any contract extensions a few days before the first game.
Yeah, I love seeing it too as well. We have had many people in this fan base, Brendan and myself, that have lamented the lack of investment in this offensive line, and it being multiple fronts. It's being what you put draft capital wise, and then what you actually spend bottom dollar into the unit. And on both of those accounts, I go back to 2019, I go back to 2020, I go back to 2021. Those would be hard line truths about those teams. And now we have finally come not full circle, but 180 degrees in the other way now, where we're 3 years into seeing multiple first round picks invested in this offensive line, multiple third round picks invested into this offensive line. And now you're starting to see some money being brought along with it. In addition to that, we're starting to actually see some transition here in the team's process, in their thinking towards this group. And I think it's going to bring out a lot of returns.
Buy the dip, people. Buy the dip. I like it.
Crypto offensive line.
Absolutely. Roy Froelich, thank you for the $10 Canadian. Once again, go Hawks. Go Hawks indeed.
Thank you, Roy. Really kind of you, man. Appreciate those donations, brother. And all of your guys' support to the channel is really, really well appreciated here.
Let's see here. Sunny from North, thank you for the $1.99. Pay K9, ball knowers know he's top 5. I mean, he may be. I don't know. I still don't know if I would pay him, but he might be top 5. It's a little bit of a weird time for running backs in the NFL right now after the top 2 or 3 guys, I think.
Yeah, I certainly could see he's in that spot, Sonny. Absolutely. It's a guy who's been really as much as anybody on this offense, and you maybe could say even more beyond the quarterbacks, and that's saying something, has been impeded by not only the craptastic offensive line, but the craptastic scheme play callers that you've had here since he's walked in. It's been both a double dip for Walker on that front of it. And so he's the guy that is really going to benefit as much as anybody when you actually now have that line that's legitimate in what they can do. And it wouldn't shock me in the least if this guy goes out and has 1,500-yard season and averages almost 5 yards a carry and puts up 15 touchdowns. He absolutely has it in him. And it has been ridiculous sometimes watching the tape and just watching the way that there's so much penetration. There's so much he's dealing with at times that other running backs just don't have to deal with. Not to that level, not to that just incessant level. And he's got a big year potentially in him. So I'm open to it, Sonny. I think I'd just be hesitant with the injury front. That's to me where it is. I trust the talent. I trust the ability. I don't trust necessarily that the health holds up. And I need to see a little bit of, I'm willing to do the extension through the year, but give me 12 games of you at prime Walker. Let me see that before I'm throwing that extension out.
Yeah, at least then I think you can think about it. Now I think it would be, unless you're getting some monster discount that I just don't think is there. Like, again, Chuba Hubbard got, what was it, 12, 13 million a year? K9's better than Chuba Hubbard, and I think everybody knows it. So Walker's getting more than that, I think.
I would agree with you. I think Chubbard's maybe got over Walker up until this point is the health. I think Walker goes out and has an 800-yard year and another bang up as far as injury goes. He's going to struggle to probably get to that amount, but a healthy season, yes, he absolutely will surpass that deal.
Mm-hmm. Sean McLeod, thank you for the $1.99. How much play should Emenwari get this Sunday? I imagine he'll be on the field on all nickel downs, which is most downs, so most of it.
I think as well, the interesting part of this year, and we'll learn a lot about what Mike McDonald's intention is going to be, is every defense in the NFL, Sean, this year is going to have a question posed to them. How do you want to deal with 12 personnel? How do you want to deal with 2 tight ends? Now, in the past, teams have tended to go to nickel in those situations. You want to go to nickel? Does Nick Emenwari become your 12 personnel beater a little bit to where now he's out there as that slot corner to play in that position of things? Because like Brendan said, it's easy. It's 3 wide. You're going to have him out there. That's easy. But 2 tight ends, 2 wide. What do you do then? Do you want to bring an extra linebacker on the field? We don't quite know necessarily how Michael will play this. I have suspicions that it will be probably Emenwari out there in both 12 personnel and when you're in 11 personnel with the 3 wide receivers, that he'll be in those stock 2 points out there, 13 personnel, 3 tight ends. He'll be out there as well for those, I think, 21 personnel. That's where he probably is not on the field, Brendan. So 21 personnel, I formation looks, 2 wide. That's probably going to be Rowland and Witherspoon on the outside, and then he would come off. I think he would come off the field in those moments. But who knows? They may be out there all the way on it. They may roll him all the way through. You never know. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. You could see like 3 safety sets, and he's the 3rd safety at some points potentially. I'm open to pretty much whatever. I think that he's a wild card. Remember, in the training camp, they had him working out with the edge rushers. They had him working with some of the linebackers. So there's a plan to deploy him everywhere, I think.
I agree. And I think when you look at the snap count, especially on this, Sean, coming out the end of the game, what, to your question, the heart of it is that when you're looking at the starter snaps across the board with the other Seahawks defenders, Emenwari is going to be step for step with them as far as those starter snaps go. You're not going to see him at like 9 snaps and Witherspoon up at like 51 snaps. It's going to be much more even Steven across the board.
Peter Go Hawks, thank you for the $4.99. My bold prediction for this year, we will have 3 Pro Bowlers on our offensive line this year. Let's go Hawks. That would be.
I mean, you know what I got to say about that, Brendan?
Enough said.
I love it, man. Hey, if we got 3 Pro Bowlers in this offensive line, we have the division, no doubt about it.
Yeah, that might be a Super Bowl team at that point because the offensive line was like the question mark almost.
Yeah, you are a very good football team if you have 3 Pro Bowlers off this offensive line this year.
Especially because it's not easy for Seahawks to make the Pro Bowl sometimes. Like they got to earn it. They got to go the hard route.
Very, very, very true. But that would be unbelievable, Peter. I love it. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, it would be Cross, Lucas, and Zabel probably, right? Those would be the 3 guys that have that kind of upper level talent.
It would, but it would also be tough too because there's so many. Again, speaks how good they'd have to be at that point because there is those Penny Sewells and Godeckis and Tristan Wirfs and guys that are kind of Lane Johnsons that are
Lane
locked
Johnson,
in at the tackle spot.
Jordan Maitaya.
Yeah. So I mean, if you get in, it's you've had to be legitimate to get there. Say nothing of, like you said, the East Coast bias that exists on these awards.
Mm-hmm. Right. Even a guy like Andrew Thomas on the Giants, like although apparently he's already hurt. And might not be starting game 1, so we'll see. But he's a guy who's got a big reputation too.
It's true. Another guy you'd have to overcome on that.
All right, so turning the page to the Seahawks offense versus that Niners defense, I think that on our side, this is all about that Niners interior that looks so tissue soft right now. You've got Jordan Elliott and Kyla Davis starting. And then you've got CJ West and Alfred Collins, the 2 rookies behind them. That's kind of your interior defensive line rotation. And you've got a team that's got a recipe to run the ball some more. That should be a pretty good matchup for them to do exactly that.
It should. And with the, you mentioned the 3 rookies they're starting that they're expecting to eat up a lot of snaps in the rotation, quasi starter snaps. 2 of those guys have been injured here throughout training camp. So you having guys in CJ West and Michael Williams, guys that you wanted to get instantaneous returns on, who you needed to have training camp and their experience through training camp to grow their game to be ready for this game one period. And I think that this is already with a line that's as weak as we've seen here in years with this Niner team. Spoke to a couple of the names that people are going, Khalil, who? We're far from the days of DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead lining up next to each other up on that defensive line. And so they are susceptible. They are vulnerable here for your Seahawks to be able to get after them in this way. It's going to be interesting to see what Saleh does to counter this, because he has to acknowledge and he understands, I think, that he doesn't have that talent in the same place it's been prior. Where I think they're going to try to lean into is the 5-man fronts. They're going to try to tear a page a bit. Saleh with the connections to Coach Carroll out of Coach Carroll's playbook with this, which is that Carroll's going to try to go back in the day at times with the 5-man fronts. And rather than being 3-4, you're going to have the Sam linebacker down there as the 5th man. So the Bruce Irvin kind of guy back in the day, and how you used him as that 5th down lineman. And that's then to hopefully with the 5th lineman, you stretch out the offensive line. So what they're trying to do with the 5 down lineman is have the extra guy on the outside zones to where it's not 4 guys you have to take into account and get kind of isolated to the outside zone. Now the 5th guy stretches everything out a little bit wider, makes it harder for you to get that edge clamp down. Allows you to kind of stretch your defensive line out a little bit more at that point. And that's how we play that, how we counter that will probably determine the success in this game from those 5-man fronts.
Just to quickly review, Kalia Davis has 13 career tackles over the last 2 seasons. And Jordan Elliott is the one veteran on this defensive line who has 5 career sacks and I think about 120 career tackles. And the 2 guys behind them have never played in an NFL game before. I think they were pretty dependent on Kevin Givens giving them something this year, and he's already done for the year, I think. So it's pretty bad in there.
Got to remember with them that they had 2 high-priced guys that they had brought in that they could hope could be not only stopgaps immediately, but that could help them out for the long term there. Because knowing with this team, since you've bled out Armsteads and DeForest Buckners, you've tried to bring in Kinlaws. That didn't really work in here. And then you had the Malik Collins and the Hargrave back-to-back years. You brought those 2 guys in for that defensive line. And the Niners made this big signal this offseason that we're going to cut all this money away. Like the owner got tired of them spending money and not winning Super Bowls. So he came back to them and he said, I'm tired of this. You're going to get the books right. I'm not spending out the wazoo anymore just to go lose Super Bowls. So they cut themselves down $100 million. And in that $100 million you cut guys that were still quality players that can play in this sport. And especially with those 2 particular guys, not saying either of them are great players still, but certainly would have been better over probably what you're trotting out there otherwise. And so that's where this vulnerability is going to exist in this Niner team in this particular game for you to potentially attack. And like you said as well, you lose 1 or 2 of these guys in the game, you're going to these rookies quick, rookies that didn't play a lot of training camp at times, depending on who we're looking at. It could be a recipe for a little bit of not a disaster to give you a little bit of an advantage in this football game.
Yeah, and one thing that you talked about a little bit during draft season, I remember, was how Alfred Collins was like a faux nose tackle. He's not a real nose tackle. He's a 3-tech, even though he kind of looks like a nose. Certainly CJ West is a nose. So they are very, very close to just not having anybody who can clog the middle. Arguably, they already kind of don't, because the guys in front of them, they're not really good, right?
Yeah. And a lot of people disagree with me on the Collins take, but he was used all over that defensive line, sometimes as the power edge. But I just saw him doing his best stuff as a 3-tech run stuffer, where he gets one-on-one opportunities to dominate basically the left guard and just handle that guy. And he's good at that, but you're right. Yeah, it doesn't give him as much the nose tackle. And even CJ West, I think you've found this as well. He was kind of more of at times felt more penetrating nose tackle than he felt like hold the line and control the blocker kind of nose tackle.
Yeah, I think he's an undersized 3-tech, really. I don't even think he's like a full 3-tech. I think he's I might be thinking of somebody else, but I think he's pretty small, even by 3-tech standards.
I think he's decent size. He's not 316. So yeah, you're not about 330, not 3, like Kenneth Grant went 337, right? Jordan Phillips went 330. So, he's missing, to your point, 15, 20 pounds. He's listed at 316, he's probably 310,
and that's not terrible for a 3-tech though. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was,
it's a tiny bit light though. I mean, it's not heavy for the position.
Yeah. He looks so short to me for some reason. I think
he is short.
Me off.
He's listed 6'1", but he's 6 foot and a half kind of guy. If you took out the fake measurements on that a bit.
Right. So I think that's the big thing to keep in mind with these Niners. Also, one of the interesting things going on here, they really only have one guy that can reliably rush the passer. Like they are down to Bosa And who's even the second best pass rusher on this team right now? It's not
It's your Matos. Yeah, I was just you stole my thunder there. Yeah, it's Gross Matos, man.
Really?
Gross Matos is the only other guy there they've got, because Michael Williams ain't gonna be ready game one to give you a passer. He might be a good run defender initially, but he's gonna take some time to figure out how to rush the passer, especially fighting through injuries. But yeah, Eater Gross Matos is your dude, and this is where we come back to me again. Niner vulnerabilities. We already spoken to a couple of places on this. They're probably going to go to these 5-man fronts because they know they can't trust their 4-man fronts to stop the run. Likewise, to your point on rushing the passer, what are you probably going to do? What have they done in preseason at times? In the moments that they've gotten pass rush, they've had to do it off blitzing. They have to do off blitzing. And an interesting stat, Brendan, is that you look at Robert Saleh with the New York Jets. I go back to 2023. He was 31st in the NFL in blitzing. Last year, comes back, he's 13th in the NFL in blitzing. So let's go just a little bit on this. Part of me wondered if he didn't start to dial up the blitzing with the Jets last year because he didn't have the pass rush consistently enough. They're behind in football games. You're getting desperate. You're trying to keep your job. If we get beat over the top because I'm blitzing, who cares, right? So part of me thinks that he's embraced it from that standpoint. I don't think that he's embraced it. I guess what I'm saying, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I don't think he's embracing it because he's suddenly like evolved to his new form, like a caterpillar leaving its cocoon. I think that he's still hardlined as a Carroll guy. Hardlined as a Carroll guy that doesn't want to change coverages, that doesn't really want to blitz, but he's going to be doing it out of necessity. And that doesn't necessarily to me mean it's a recipe for him having success there and them doing it. It's doing it because we have to do it. And we learned this with Seattle in the Jamal Adams years when that first year he was here. When you're in a point of blitzing because you have to, because you can't trust your front four to get it done, you're going to create some problems on the back end.
Yeah, and he only coached 5 games last year, right? He got fired after 5 games, so it's not even a very big sample size.
That's true. Yeah.
So I wouldn't read a ton into that. Now, he might have to do it this year, but I don't think a guy like that is ever going to want to blitz. And really, I guess most coaches probably don't want to blitz. They'd love to live in a world where their front four just gets it done every play, but some coaches acknowledge that it's not that simple. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think he is going to give it to you. This the way you deal with the simulated pressures in this game, how Darnold reads it, the answers he has for it, Kubiak's ability to anticipate it, offensively will be a big part of this game, because if the Niners just try to play you straight up and without any kind of moving parts or anything else like that, I don't think this defense has enough weapons out there to just shut you down that way so simplistically as they have before in recent years when it was stronger.
Right. So that definitely provides a pretty significant weakness. And hey, it's a great opportunity for Lucas to earn that extension money week 1 because he's going up against Bosa.
He is. And last year in that matchup, when Lucas came back in the second matchup, Bosa's a blindside guy more often than not. They'll move him all around, but they'll move him around when they think they can attack and isolate a mismatch. And they tried to do that with Lucas in that second game. Lucas did a good job against him. It didn't mean there wasn't a win here or there for Bosa, but certainly for Lucas just coming back last year, he gave as good as he got again in that Bosa matchup. But it'll also be interesting to see if maybe they don't try to maybe test Cross coming off of that finger injury and where are you at? So be interesting to see what the Niners think, because they'll tell us a lot about where they line Bosa up by what they think about which tackle is the bigger threat on that, with where they stand on it. But I do think Lucas will probably eat up most of the snaps there.
All right, let's talk about these linebackers real quick, because the Niners definitely had a little bit of an interesting shuffling of the deck chairs there, because they lost Greenlaw, and obviously they didn't have Greenlaw for most of the season last year, but they tried to replace him last year, and it was a complete disaster. Devondre Campbell, they rode with him for a little bit, but ultimately we all know how that one ended. That was as bad as it gets. So this year you've got D. Winters, you've got Luke Gifford, and they also have a rookie who I don't even know if he's like 210 pounds, Nick Martin. That guy needs to be playing safety. But how do you think they're going to do replacing him this year compared to last year?
He's an itty bitty teeny tiny bikini. That Nick Martin, man, he's tiny.
Oh, yeah.
Martin's the guy that they want to use for the blitz stuff. He'll probably come out at times in sub package roles for the blitzes. Both him and Winters are cut a little bit similar cloth. Winters a little bit bigger, but Winters is still a smaller guy. But next to Nick, he looks like a giant. Winters is a former 6th round pick. So look, this team's taken the step backwards as far as where they were at Greenlaw and what Greenlaw supplied from talent ability. Greenlaw was out a lot of the year, but Campbell didn't play particularly well. Winters was probably a little bit better than Campbell, but at the same point in time, they were rocking with Campbell even up into the point Greenlaw came back, which spoke to, I think, a little bit of their thought of, considering how bad Campbell played, that They didn't love Winters last year, and it kind of feels like this year, as much as anything, that they just kind of went, well, we'll grab Nick Martin, and then we'll have Winters, and then hopefully one of the two of them will be a good enough starter for us to get by. It's like, we're just going to get by, rather than before you actually had impact from the will linebacker position. In Winters, he's fast, he plays hard, he has improved as a player. We both kind of liked him a little bit coming out as a later round linebacker. I don't think we saw him as being a steal for them or a guy that would be an heir apparent to start for them. I do think that there's size limitations from the will linebacker position. There is in general with the Niners linebackers as is. Fred Warner's not the biggest guy either. They're there to run around and be fast, but the problem is that if you don't have the defensive line up front that's carrying up those blockers, those guys that are smaller and undersized, second level climbers, and we have the offense now that's going to bring those linemen into the second level to take on those linebackers, that's where it can be hard for you. Whereas you go look at our guys like Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight, they're a little bit bigger linebackers. Like they got the size to be able to get off those blocks at the second level and be able to just kind of scrape right around them and get back in on the tackle. Not that Warner's not great. Warner's freaking fantastic, maybe the best inside linebacker in the sport right now, but just maybe a place that you can take advantage of this a little bit with them.
Right. I'm kind of looking at that too. And honestly, I even look at that secondary, and I got to say, I'm not overly impressed. The Niners haven't even named a starting strong safety yet. They're playing at Coy. Is it going to be Jair Brown? Is it going to be Sigel? I think is Marquez Sigel is the name.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, Jair Brown has just gone on a milk carton ever since that rookie season he had. I don't know what's going on there, but he seems like he's on his way out.
Yeah.
And without Charvarius Ward, this cornerback room just, I don't know. It doesn't do much for me.
Can't we just come back to, you just feel like a Niner team in scrambling mode? We pulled down $100 million off of our cap. We let more talent drain out. Hufanga, Greenlaw, Javarius Ward. Now, was Ward at the end? Is he starting to kind of wind down? Maybe a little bit, but you're letting this talent just constantly drain out and then scrambling to try to fill it back in. Ricardo Green had a pretty solid year for them as a rookie outside of Florida State, a guy we both like coming out. I think he's going to be at least a functional player for them on the outside. But this is a thing where in this scramble mode now, this is what happens with this, is that like we do a little bit the nose tackle with Byron Murphy, is that when you start to get into scramble mode, you take a player that's really good in a one role here, and then you move him out of that really good role. Who's that guy going to be? Demondre Lenore, the guy that just yippity yap, he can't stop talking. Well, this guy is going to now move to the outside and beyond there because they lost Javarius Ward and you have a need for an outside corner and you don't like the guys that you have developing around it. So you're now moving him out of the slot where he's best. He's a slot demon, to put him to the outside where he's not as good. And even Niner fans will acknowledge he's not as good onto that outside. So you're almost now kind of weakening your slot and not now even able to maybe keep your outside corner position as strong as it once was prior. So there's vulnerabilities there. And you talked about the safety room. You've got in recent years, Jimmy Ward left, Hufanga's now gone on. Back like the defensive line. Who were your replacements there? Who are the guys
Mustafa's
that you have?
out.
Mustafa, yeah, and you love him. Mustafa had a strong year for them, but he's out in this game. And so, yeah, you're down looking at it going, it's a little light. It's a little weak. It's a little vulnerable. Every positional group on this Niner defense, there is that place that you can point to. There's some vulnerabilities. And we couldn't always say this about this Niner team over the past couple of years.
Right. I don't know. I'm just completely underwhelmed looking at the secondary. I like Upton Stout at nickel. I do like him. And apparently he's fine, by the way. So he's expected to play in this game. But
he's an Indian rookie.
Yeah, he is.
So yeah.
He's young too.
So it's like, that's where, and maybe I'm doing too much advanced math here, but I'm like, well, you had Lenore in the slot. He gives you a certain level of ability there. This kid as a rookie, maybe he's good 5, 6, 7 games down the line where he's able to kind of like it all turns on, but is in game one rookie and on the road, is he going to be as good as what you would have from Lenore from the slot? No. And then is Lenore going to be as good playing out of position on the outside from what you would have had normally there or what you've been playing there normally? I don't think so. And so this is where the Niners are again giving you a little bit of an opportunity here to make them a little bit easier because they're filling holes a little bit. Not Upton's not bad. I'm a little reticent on a guy rookie versus Lenore there.
Did they cut Trey Brown? Because I don't see him on the depth chart anymore. Is he gone?
Is he? I had not been tracking him. At one point or another, they were looking at him as being the starter there. So
really, that's interesting because ESPN doesn't have him listed at all.
Yeah, they must have cut him.
Wow, that's I think that speaks to it. I guess how rough it was.
Yeah, IR got placed on the IR.
Oh wow. Okay, so.
Man, the Niners with injuries, bro. We haven't gotten to games yet, you guys.
Mm-hmm. All right, so you put it all together. It's a defense that is really, really top heavy. Bosa is still great. Fred Warner is still great, but it feels like after that, you fall off a little bit of a cliff, and you are betting very heavily on Saleh doing the heavy lifting. And Saleh's great. I think Saleh is a great DC. I think he was a pretty decent head coach. So I'm not taking that away from him, but you got to say this defense is a little bit low on talent that is capable of producing stuff right now.
I would agree with that. And I think even with Solid having a defense at times that could be good in New York, something that stood out with him and something that stood out with his time in the Niners is that he had a tremendous amount of talent and resources put into those particular defenses to make them what they were. And right now with this Niner defense, you've not necessarily stuck a significant amount of assets into this defense to give him an equivalency there. Yeah, you paid Bosa. Yeah, you played Warner. Yeah, you paid DeMondre Lenore, but you don't have the young talent on cheap rookie contracts that's really dynamic right now, like again you once did, and it just feels like a night and day difference a little bit on that. And I think Saul is a good coordinator, but I don't know that he's a great coordinator for if I've got to scheme up around a talent deficiency. Like, oh, you need me to X's and O's come up with a way to overcome that. I don't know if he's as wired as much from that. Again, coming from a little bit of the Coach Carroll tree of it, which is let my players run fast and free. I don't want them thinking a lot. I don't want them having a lot of extra details they have to think every play on. I just want them to go. And I don't think you suddenly turn that coach into, kind of a Belichickian type of guy. And that I'm going to pull him from here and this guy's going to come from there and that guy's going to drop out here. And it's going to, you're wired that way or you're not. Like McDonald, right. I think is wired that way.
Yeah. So once again, I look at this and I think to myself, I think we're looking pretty good. I like the matchup. I think that if you're Grace Abel and Jalen Sundell, who are making their first ever NFL starts this week, you got to feel pretty good looking at that interior of the Niners defense and saying, okay, that's my matchup. I don't have to deal with Javon Hargrave. I don't have to deal with Eric Armstead. I don't have to deal with those guys. I get to deal with Jordan Elliott and CJ West and Alfred Collins. That's about as good as it gets.
It is. This matchup is set up in an ideal way for you to be able to take this one. It doesn't mean the Niners aren't a tough battle and this is not going to be a tough matchup, but just that you've got some built-in advantages here, especially being week one at home on top of this that, should really supply you the inroads to go take this game.
Right. All right. So special teams wise, I mean, the Niners have their own special teams problems. Jake Moody's been kind of I haven't been tracking everything, but my understanding is he had a messy preseason. So they've got their own problems over there.
They're trying to make the Moody thing work. And even the fans are like, please stop trying to make the Moody thing work. But they keep trying to make the Moody thing work. So he's the D. Williams of kickers for them.
Yeah, it seems like using the high pick on the kicker never works. It puts too much pressure on the kicker to be great. Like, remember Robert Aguayo?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that guy was out of the league in like 2 years.
It does seem, to your point, that there's like a head thing that this gets into their head when they're picked high versus when they got to prove it. I don't know why, but with not even punters out. Dixon was a 4th rounder, but even with just kickers, it does seem like that they have some weird, like, their headspace has to be in the right area, and they need the prove it mode kind of guy. So yeah, I agree with you there. It's kind of a weird situation.
Yeah. Even like Janikowski was a good kicker, but I don't know if he was worth the 1st round pick.
Probably not the 1st round pick worthy of it, but a good kicker, big leg for sure.
Jordan, thank you for the $10 super chat. I don't know if this was addressed, but the rumor of 53% of tickets are 49ers fans seem to be debunked. It came from a ticket seller that only has 3% of total tickets. I can't see all the data. Yes, I heard that as well. It's what's it called? Vivid Seats, and they're not even one of the 2 biggest ticket sellers.
Yeah, I thought that was a BS thing when I saw it. It didn't add up or track up. I don't think even the Buffalo Bill game last year, you had that game with 53% of the fans in that stadium in that game when that was awful. So you'll have Niner fans in the stadium, but we'll be well represented in there. So I saw that. I didn't buy that when I first saw it. It seemed off. It's like, no way. Come on, nah.
Yeah, I don't know what the number will be. It'll be a decent number of Niners fans. They travel well. They're just 1,000 miles south. I'm sure there will be Niners fans, but it's not going to be 53%.
Yeah, it ain't going that nuts.
All right. So real quick, just before we get to the finality of this show, the final point we want to make, just one more time, I want to tell you guys just one more time about Sleeper. Get on over there. You can play daily fantasy. You can follow scores and stats. You can chat with stuff in real time. You can make all kinds of fun things happen over there. Go get it done over at Sleeper. Once again, my promo code for $100 match up to 100% match up to $100 is SBN, and yours is Nest.
That's right.
So those are the promo codes. Check out Sleeper, best sporting app out there right now. All right.
Amen.
So I guess all that's left is to make a pick. So you go ahead and take that one away, and I'll go next.
Seattle finds consistency on the ground throughout the game, not dominance. They're able to convert more third downs than the Niners. They're able to run the ball more consistently in this game throughout than the Niners. I think that we end up winning this 2013. I think that the Niners are able to kind of mount a little comeback at the end, but I think that we have the game fairly well in control here throughout the 4 quarters rather than being a back and forth. Not that we run away with it, but it's fairly tight, but that we are in general control of the football game.
Yeah, I'm going to go 27-20. I'm going to go 27-20. I know that it's the first game of a new offense, and I know that we don't exactly have the most loaded offense out there. But I look at this Niners defense, and I just can't imagine this offense not being able to put up at least 24, 27 points. I just don't see the players. And even though I like Saleh, I don't see the coaching, the scheming to overcome that. And again, this is why you brought in Mike Macdonald. You brought in Mike Macdonald so you could beat Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan, so you could make those guys uncomfortable in a way that Pete just simply couldn't. So I don't think they're gonna beat you either. So I'm feeling pretty good about it.
I love it, man. I love it. I think we get this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am feeling pretty darn good about it. And I think that's really all that need be said at this point. Yeah, everybody get ready for football tonight. Going to be fun. And hopefully on Sunday, we get started on the right foot.
For members of my channel, I'll be streaming tonight, Thursday Night Football throughout the season for members and patrons of the channel. So keep an eye on your community post over there on that, as I'll be popped on later doing that.
Right. And we will be doing this again in 1 week. We will be talking about, hopefully, a win over the Niners. But whatever happens Sunday, we will be talking about it a little bit. And then we'll be previewing the first road game of the year in Pittsburgh against the Steelers. But we got to get through this one first. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. We peaked up around 350 people today. So thank you, everybody, for showing up. And hey, let's go get this done. Let's get this win. Let's start 1-0 in the division. Let's start 1-0 overall. Let's take advantage of this Niners team that is probably just not quite ready to be the best versions of themselves with all these young players they're leaning on. So all that we can do is sit back and cheer and hope that the team does the right things. But I'm feeling pretty good about this season, people. I'm feeling pretty good about this season. I wasn't sure I was going to end up here earlier in the offseason, but right now I'm feeling pretty darn good about things. So we're going to say it, and then we're going to get out of here. I'll see you guys later today. Brandon, I know you're going to be doing your play-by-play on Sunday, right?
That's right.
All right. So
on 1 o'clock, come on over the channel. I'll be doing live reaction play-by-play throughout the game.
Yeah, everybody go check that out. I'll be doing my post-game stuff right after the game ends over on Bleacher Report. So check it all out. And more than ever, you got to hit it right now. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.